and thank you all for being here today, my co-speakers and members of the audience and those who will be listening into this recording later on. It is a huge pleasure once again to be part of this event online in the Uche Okeke Legacy Service Space on Discord. My name is Tamzin Lovell. I'm the founder and CEO of Artfundi, and I'm your conversation host for today. And this is the second in the conversation series Coffee Uche Okeke, which is running throughout the month of August, every Thursday at this time. And today on the stage with me, we have Salma Uche Okeke, daughter of the great late Christopher Uche Okeke, and she'll be bringing her wealth of knowledge, real deep insider knowledge about her father Uche Okeke to share with us. And we also have Lucinda Jolly, a journalist, art critic, art journalist, a published author, and most recently, author of a feature article that was published in the Daily Maverick about the Uche Okeke legacy. So, Lucinda, thank you for joining us and sharing your insights, your research that you've done, and your perspective on the Uche Okeke legacy. And thank you for joining the conversation with Salma and myself today.
Thank you for having me, and lovely to see Salma again, and you, Tamzin.
Thanks, Lucinda. So we have a multinational audience and a multinational topic that is Uche Okeke. We are speaking from a couple of different countries virtually on this stage. Isn't it wonderful technology that you can get into a space, be in 3 different parts of the world, and here we are all together having a conversation like we're having a cup of coffee together. It's absolutely phenomenal. Your dad would have loved that, Salma.
Oh, definitely. He loved to talk. He loved to just, share ideas. And so he would have definitely loved this concept of a hangout, and borderless for that matter. So that makes it even better for him.
Yes, we'll speak about that just now, because he really was a borderless personality. His mind was borderless. It flew beyond. I think you can tell us more, Salma, about that. But it seems to me that it flew beyond his own environment, but it flew beyond his discipline as an artist. He seemed to be so multifaceted and interested in so many different things. So perhaps that's a good place to kind of kick off the conversation today about the breadth of this amazing mind and this man that was Professor Uche Okeke.
Yeah, it is really amazing how broad his mind was. It was like an empty canvas that could be filled with just about anything. He was an all-round good student, so he could have gone in any direction with his career, but he chose art. Art was for him a real expression of his creativity, but then it meant that he could engage in just about anything. And because he was particularly interested in people, he was always ready to just discuss things with different people and discuss whatever. It didn't have to be only art, but in the process, he also passed on his own philosophy. That was the interesting thing.
Indeed. And Lucinda, as an arts writer, you do a lot of reading, you do a lot of thinking, a lot of interviewing of people, and is it unusual, this kind of, in today's world, this what they used to call the Renaissance man, this person, this breadth of interest and diversity of in terms of kind of crossing into different fields, or do you think it's coming back? What are your views on that?
I think with technology, it's certainly come back. And I think if in our own country, someone like William Kentridge, who does opera, lino cuts, there's a similarity of type, as you said, the Renaissance man or the Renaissance person. I think artists are very curious. They're also a bit like vultures. They like to, peck on different bits of things and stick them together. So I think there is that, but it's a particular kind of person. I mean, when I spoke to Salma about her dad, she mentioned that he was like a sponge, and it was a very nice way of putting it. I think his curiosity, and artists are curious, but they're degrees, and he was particularly curious. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, it does indeed. I think he was, and I wonder if it's that curiosity itself that led him to being such a collector as well. So an avid reader and also a collector of many things, also documenting his own processes and that documenting enabling us now together to be having a wealth of archive with which to create a legacy, but also the way that he handled his sharing of knowledge and sharing of assets and things with people during his lifetime. Salma, do you want to tell us a little bit about the way that your dad would share, either as a teacher or as a collaborator with his colleagues? How would he go about sharing? Because he seemed to be a very generous personality.
The way I noticed that he shared basically cut across, if he was talking to students, if he was talking to his contemporaries. It was a whole lot to do with storytelling. And it was a whole lot to do with a lot of interaction, in the sense that it would never have been a one-way traffic, so the conversation just meanders and, on both sides, and it's picking some things and you are picking some things at the same time. So you never have this feeling like he's trying to get you informed or he's trying to actively mentor you. But that also made it that a lot of people reached out to him, because he appeared to be a sort of fountain of wisdom, so to speak, in so many areas, in terms of relationship management, in terms of career orientation, in terms of course, the art itself, whatever sphere of it that would be. He did have something to say, or somebody to in his network to link you up with, to help you more, mentor you more. And so that particular attribute of his, which is natural, made him quite engaging and made him quite the person to be sought after, because even amongst his contemporaries, they spoke of him as a philosophy king. So he was always the ideas man, and he was always the channel, for them to achieve most of the things that they did.
I had a conversation with one of his colleagues, an elderly gentleman, the other day, and he was speaking of your father as having a fellowship, a kind of following, but he described it as a fellowship, and I got the sense of people around him, but also that he was open to being influenced by other people as well.
Exactly.
And you used the word just now, natural. He had that sort of philosophy of natural synthesis, which is the combination of the way that one thing might influence another. Like his, and when we get to talking about internationalness or relevance across borders, he was open to allowing his travels or his education or his experiences in other countries, in other markets, to come back and kind of influence him and bring those in, and equally to bring some of his traditions to bear upon things that he brought out of Nigeria into the rest of the world. Do you have a way of sort of telling that story a little bit better than I'm struggling to describe it, but that way of his of natural synthesis, Salma?
Yeah. You have really said it very well. He was somebody that was very detailed in the sense that he was always actively seeking for knowledge. It sounds trite, but you know, I mean, as long as you're alive, you're learning. And, you know, some people make it an important part of their life, a deliberate effort to keep searching. So he was looking for knowledge in his homeland and outside his homeland, all at the same time. Because he had to do a lot of research on his ideology also, or on his ideas around holism. He had to learn about it because, you know, that tradition was not as in use by you know, at that time when he started, when he embraced it. So he continued. I know he continued doing research around it up until when he could no longer. So he was learning from all sides, so to speak, and there was that fluidity about it because, you know, it was an ongoing thing for him, his learning, and an ongoing thing for him, his sharing his ideas, you know. So most definitely he was getting influenced and also influencing others. And his approach enabled him to improve on his ideas. Well, first improve on his knowledge base, improve on his ideas, and be able to share them and pick up new ideas. And that cut across wherever he was in the world was still the same thing. He learned new things and he shared his own knowledge. So each time he was like, we're going about his activities now, putting it in layers. You know, it was like an onion. You know, you just keep adding on the layers. If you have to take it off, it goes off in stages. And that was exactly how he ran his life. And so everything was a collaboration, so to speak. Even getting his fellowship, it was a collaboration because he always allowed people their initiative, you know, to run with the ideas in whatever direction they saw it also. So there was that freedom to take ownership of the idea, even if he brought it forward first, you know, and so they could own it and run with it in any direction that they fancied, and that helped him to, I think, to be able to pass on his ideas and also for people to open up to him and pass ideas to him. So it was a real circle of sharing.
I love that. It's such an ever growing and positive approach to life, I suppose. That sort of idea of the onion, and what you're doing now as part of the legacy, the living legacy, or continuing his work, and it brings me to something Lucinda wrote in her article, which was about why he's relevant even today and outside of his own country, is that the work that you're doing as well continues what he was doing. That sort of blending and continuous fluidity of influencing and being influenced, and influencing and being influenced. That kind of openness to continuous learning. and in a way, as a part of what you're doing for the legacy itself, is you're taking that same approach. You're extending his community outside of the country, as he always did. And that's something that Lucinda picked up on, and I'd love for you to chat to us a bit about that, Lucinda, from your perspective as an art critic and art journalist. It's an approach that you always take to look at what is the relevance of this person in our time today and in this particular place. And you've looked at that relevance across various geographies. Would you like to comment on your findings, if you like, during your process?
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, I think the idea of an interactive, I think that's what you're talking about, an interactive legacy. You know, legacies are often kind of dry and dusty, and yet somehow Salma and you guys have come up with something that is interactive. And so often, as I said in my piece, I don't know if this is what you're referring to, Tamzin, you go to a gallery and it's lovely, but there's no part of you. You go away with an imprint. And through this, what I call the living legacy, people are encouraged and invited to actually connect with Uche Okeke. And it's a wonderful thing of immersing yourself in his spirit, as it were, and then creating your own, which I think he would have celebrated, Salma. I think he would have been intrigued. And there seemed to be a kind of a curiosity around him with everything. And this allows what you guys have put together in terms of the legacy, allows people to get to know him at a very subliminal level in the engagement with his work, and then a reconstitution of stuff. I think that's very now. You know, non-fungible tokens is very now, and you know, the democratizing of the internet. You know, anybody can get on it. Doesn't matter where you come from. It's global. It's relatively affordable, and it's highly creative and porous. And as Salma always said, her dad was like a sponge. I'm not sure if I've answered what you had in mind. And also globally, it means it can go to any country in the world, apart from possibly Russia or China.
Yes, absolutely. I think that nowness of the collaboration, and as Salma said, everything was a collaboration. Now the living legacy is creating a new way, and it'll be one, there'll be others as well, new way of continuing the work, continuing the collaboration philosophy that he had, and finding the relevant current today's way of doing that, and today's way of engaging young people.
Well, he understood the intersectionality of the sort of the traditional work and the global work that was happening. And remember, of course, the West owes a huge debt to both Africa and, of course, Asia. You know, if you look at Picasso or Matisse or any of them, even further back than that. And the way that he was able to synthesize or hybridize, not reject the old and not reject the future, and sort of make it into a huge melting pot of possibility. It's very exciting. And in a way, what the living legacy has done is exactly that. It's a melting pot of young and the past and the future. I mean, Salma, correct me, I think he was very future orientated, you know.
Yes, he was very future oriented. That's one thing I know for sure. He was very, like we said, eager to learn new things, eager to explore, know more about others. I mean, take for example, when I was to go into secondary school, we were living in the eastern part of Nigeria, and he said I had to go to the northern part of Nigeria to go to school so that I could, broaden my perspective and learn more about. I mean, this is just within Nigeria, and and they had to take me there, and I was just 11 years old and hadn't been away from home. But that gives you an idea of how important it was for him to keep getting exposed to new things, and seeing how other people, other cultures operate, and of course the purpose of it all would be ultimately to take the good out of it and add to what he already has and improve what he has. So he was analytical that way. Yeah.
There's a sense of him being a juncture man. I mean, he lived at the death of colonialism and the birth of liberation and then the Civil War. There's he's connected to these sort of very disparate times. And it gives the work and his thinking a richness, because to live at that time, it's so opposite in a way, and yet putting it together in a synthesis. I mean, his whole development of natural synthesis is exactly that. He's a man of edges, a man who connects edges. And I mean, he's found in the UK, in various huge national galleries. He's found in America, in MoMA. His work has been exhibited there. And the same with his, Salma, just jump in if I'm going off too far, but he was a man of exploration technically. So he looked at mediums, he looked at ink, he looked at gouache, he looked at monotypes, he looked at color, he was a writer, illustrator. And it's a reflection of the man of many parts, isn't it? Excited by the new. You talked about him as a bridge maker, Salma, and I think that's very important. And I'm fascinated that his work was in the early part of his life, and then his philosophy developed out of the work, and the work was not secondary, but it wasn't as prominent. So that's also very interesting.
Yes, very interesting at the beginning. He started with walking, and gradually building up his philosophy as he got more and more exposure. But he started at an early stage. So he seemed to have had an idea of his sense of direction, but of course he needed more and more exposure, more and more experience to keep, tweaking it. And then towards the end of his life again, before he fell sick, he did a couple works again, mostly out of maybe they were commissioned works, that kind of thing. But his earlier period was his most prolific period as an artist.
And then he was also a writer and a poet. And when did he do those other kinds of work as much at the same time, or did he start with the kind of visual art side and then do more of the writing later? How did that develop?
He did the writing simultaneously. I found out that my siblings and I were all very good writers. As a matter of fact, when he came on sabbatical and was in the US, Minnesota, I also came along. Well, all of us went, and I was in high school, and I actually won a prize in Wisconsin for creative writing. And as I see it happening also with the next generation, I think there's that. It's there in our DNA of writing. Everybody writes brilliantly. Of course, some will be more creative than others. So he had it in him already, and he was bound to be writing. But he wrote alongside with his with the art he created. And remember that the writing, the poetry had to do with folklore, and folklore had to do with the Uli designs also. So as he was making his research, he veered off into all that because they are all interconnected, and so he also documented them. Writing was very important to him, whether it was creative or just taking notes. Everywhere in his study, there are all kinds of things. He wrote down everything, what he thought. He documented it at once.
Makes such a beautiful. I was going to say it makes such a beautiful archive for you to work with now in terms of building up his legacy that others in future can look back and research, can read his writings, can understand him better. Yes. What a great gift.
He left a lot of himself behind. because he was always building for posterity, building to leave something back for others, building to bequeath to the public. He was always doing that.
What was his hope for artists?
I would think that his hope for artists was to, especially in these parts, was to have an enabling environment for them to be able to practice art without any hindrance. Because during his time, art was not one of the professions that was considered to be, viable or respectable or something that a parent would encourage a child to do. And so it was very, very important for him. But there are lots of people that had the talent and had the interest, but didn't have the enabling environment. And Nigeria was at the beginning of most of this, and he was very much instrumental to setting up curricula, so that they could learn it in school. I mean, he learned it in school himself, but, creating it on a much more organized way so that it becomes a profession that can easily be engaged with. And then on a global level, he wanted to showcase what we had to the world. And not just us, the rest of Africa, but it wasn't really like a regional thing. It was more like just creating the right mentorship to encourage those kinds of cultural exchanges.
I think that word you've just used of exchange, for me, kind of sums up a lot of what we've been chatting about today in this conversation, with the way that he exchanged ideas with other people in an interactive kind of constant collaboration ideal, the way that he exchanged or interchanged from being an artist and a poet and a philosopher and an educator and a bridge maker, etc. That fluid exchange of or movement from one thing to another is, I think, it sort of sums up for me this conversation of today of this multifaceted, important Renaissance man that we are here to remember and to continue his work and to celebrate.
Yeah. I think celebration is really a good one, because he seemed to be such an optimist, such a profound believer in possibility, whatever. And that is something we certainly need in this particular time, that spirit of getting through. I mean, he went through, colonialism, he went through liberation, he went through civil war. That's a lot to go through in a lifetime, and to come out still positive and still willing to, as Salma pointed out, be as gracious to the little person as to the greats. I think that's a sign of a real mensch, as they say in Yiddish, a real human. Yeah.
I totally agree with Lucinda. It was really amazing. I mean, every single experience he had only helped him to focus more on the positivity that is within mankind. For some reason, he just focused his mind on the good things, and for him the possibilities were endless. He was always focused on how he could impact positively, really, from whatever angle. And all the people that he mentored, it was still basically that. In whatever sphere of life you think you're interested in, or your best fit, you know, there should be something you're adding to humanity, some positive thing.
That's
Yeah, the very interesting.
Makes him an inspiration. I was going to say, carry on, Lucinda.
No. I think the whole idea of that humanity is so relevant for now as well, as we struggle with the global situation in our own country. Humanity becomes such a prevalent approach, and it's so hard to carry it sometimes, you know, because one gets, you know, angry and upset. And to have that in as part of his legacy is such a wonderful reminder of how we can be, you know, and how and
better.
yes. And I mean, when I spoke to you about him and you said about his humanity, his whole approach rests on that. The whole legacy rests on humanity and support of each other and kindness. And it's wonderful. It's rare.
And come to think about it, now we're talking about the global situation.
Yes.
Realize that didn't have a bone of racism in him. He wasn't tribalistic, because all his friends are from different parts of his country, completely. His closest associates. And I remember during the interview mentioning to you that his friend, we used to call him Uncle Bahem, George Bahem, of blessed memory. He used to come visiting. You know, his people were always coming from all over the world, and he had formed a brotherhood with a whole lot of them, you know. And he came one time, and he was wearing his safari shorts, and I was just in primary school, and I said, "Oh, knickers," and my dad thought I said, that was the time I saw him livid. The one time in all his life that I saw him livid. He didn't say anything to me when Uncle Bahem was around, but he later called me to scold me, and he wasn't much into scolding children, because he didn't bring us up that way. And then I said to him, I said knicker, which means shorts. So, you know, but then come to think about it, because I never really thought about it. He went all over the world, and all he did was see people, see new cultures that he could learn about, see new things he could learn about, and everybody was equal to him.
Wish we could all be like that. The whole world could be like that. It would be much
I thought he was a little bit socialist. I thought.
Social democrat.
So, but that was what he was. He didn't have any, you know, it was all borderless for him. All didn't really matter, you know, and everything was all interesting, and you know, everybody had something to give, you know, and you know, each culture definitely had something worth studying and finding out more about, and you know, and self-improvement was definitely he was big on that.
But it's almost in his DNA, Salma, because you mentioned his grandfather worked elsewhere, and it's not traditionally that wasn't really done. And then your dad also worked away from his locality, away from his. So there you have the softening of borders, and it's really interesting because currently in most of academia now there's a move towards not just studying anthropology but psychology and ecology. So and he was like a mover of boundaries or a dissolver of boundaries, which it makes him very important for now, because we're having to accept you can't be so fixed in your fields of study and your ways of thinking, you know. I mean, I think of another countryman of yours called Bayo, the philosopher and psychologist, the lecturer who talks about this, of traditional practices with current, with ecology, you know, all of that, all combining. And he seems to have done that years ago, you know, back in the beginning of time, in the 40s. Yeah.
So that is really interesting. He came from. It was his father that had went into civil service. He worked at the train station. That was the offshoot of colonialism back in the day. In Nigeria, colonialism was not really a painful exercise for us. It was more like exposure to new things in Nigeria. So we didn't have that bitterness about it. So at the time when the colonialists came, people were ready to let their junior children go and find out about this thing. What is the new thing? Go to the church and get the education, the Western education. They would normally leave their older sons to continue with the tradition. So my grandfather happened to be the youngest son of his own father. And so his father gave him over to the church and the new ways of life. And so he started building his career, and that's how come he was able to work in the train station. I mean, that was a prestigious job at that time. Now, he was working in the train station, and that meant he could travel. He could be posted to anywhere in the country. And so my father started off early enough, not living in his own locality or in his own area of province and all that. He was pretty far away. And so he was early off in his life exposed to other people, other cultures, other ways of thinking. Northern Nigeria compared to Eastern Nigeria is quite different. I think that early part of his life must have affected his how broad-minded he was to be. I think so. So he saw different things. You don't have to not necessarily go with some of the things, but you realize these are legitimate ways of doing things, legitimate cultures in their own right. And some of it you will see is good, and so you can also open it. You can also use it yourself, and that was what probably spoke to him. And then in terms of art, his father was also into carpentry, a craftsman. So he got exposed that early to such things. In his spare time, the father did that kind of work, which he learned, with the Western education, because, in those days, they used to teach them some kind of technical, they used to give them some kind of technical training back in the day. And then his mother knew about this really design. So when he started making his research, he started off with his mother as a point of reference. And his father died while he was very young. He was 10 years when his father died, 10 years old when his father died. But being the first son, and really, out of 7 children, he was the third, and his last sibling was the only other boy amongst them. He was a baby when his father died. His mother deferred to him to decide if they were to relocate out of that area, and he said they should stay on. So they stayed back there, and that's how come he went to Zaria Technical College, what later became Ahmadu Bello University in the north. So all this rich experience, definitely spoke to his mind. When he finished, he came to Lagos, which is in the western part of Nigeria, and worked a little bit in government, and continued with his art there before he went back to the north again. And then during the war, they were told that it was going to get bad, and then they relocated because they had property there. And their property was kept for them. After the war, it was given back to them. So, yes. So, definitely all these things must have affected him. So I think I didn't meet my grandfather, but my grandmother, I knew her to be a very intelligent woman. Very particular, very meticulous, like you're in a house and she has to keep things in certain places, those kinds of things. and he definitely picked that. So, there's that sense of, I would say his father was more the artist, being a craftsman, and his mother had the sense of order that enhances design in the long run. So he had those two combinations, and luckily his mother left him to do whatever he felt, so he was able to go into the arts, which was his natural calling.
What's also interesting is he didn't throw out the baby with the bathwater. He hybridized, what he'd learned through colonialism and tradition and the going forward. A lot of people get quite a strong, hardened, we're not going to have any of this, we're not going to have any of that. And it made such a rich compost or a rich stew of things because he was able to pull from so many threads. And I think that's really, really important. And it shows an enormous amount of openness and a lack of hardening of a stance to oppressors, which they were, and the world, which didn't help either. And yet sort of navigating between those, the past colonialism and his education in that approach, especially being taught a trade rather than a profession, which is typical colonial, and then also his deep ancestral connection with the Uli aspect. All of that is really deepening rather than just rejecting this, rejecting that, and that's another thing to be mindful of. Don't deny where you've come from and where you're going. And I think he's a fabulous example of that.
And at that time, also, the general landscape was of, so much happening globally in terms of emancipation, in terms of identity, in terms of, like I said before, in Nigeria, the colonial experience was more like, exposure to new things, really. Didn't come with the bitterness that some others had. I mean, even in some countries where the British had also colonized, we got it really, really good, basically, And I think the British found Nigerians really, a funny set of people, and they were they were very quite taken in by how fast Nigerians picked up things and that kind of thing at that time. And so they mostly gave the opportunity for them to learn more things since they were already quite agile in that way. So it gave a lot of opportunities for people, anybody that was serious, and really anything to offer in life, to be able to do something with their life. So it was, on that platform of things, and the next thing, the pride of independence, all that would surely have affected everybody that was going through the experience at the time.
And he seemed to include everybody. It didn't matter what your clan was or what your background was. Apparently there are lots and lots of strands in Nigeria of different clans. I'm not allowed to say tribe, it's politically incorrect. But everybody was included, from Bible stories, which is the past, and current religion, and all the traditional belief systems. So he didn't ask this one and that one. Everybody was invited to sit at the table, which is also very amazing, because you have such factions sometimes. In the Civil War, the faction between this group and that group, and yet somehow he just did what he felt was right, yeah?
Yes, he definitely did. I try to imagine how it could have been if the environment wasn't that dead and that renaissance at that time also. I remember that my grandmother was also involved in ordering clothes from the UK at the time. My two grandmothers on both sides, for that matter, because that was a thing to do. You wanted to get clothes, you ordered them from Britain, at the time. It was all, yeah. So, and I think there was that may her soul rest in peace. Queen Elizabeth, she was really somebody that people looked up to, you know, and there was that influence, you know, and there was Europe with all kinds of interesting cultural, you know, rich cultural activities and, you know, historical things to look at. And I remember then that recently, more recently, after my father's demise, I was speaking to his friend, one of his friends and contemporaries, and he told me at that time they had decided amongst themselves that they would go to Europe. They to learn more, you know, and so they decided where each of them would go. And my father was to go to Germany. He went to France, and I remember one more person was to go to some other place in Europe. They weren't considering the United States at that time because they thought it was not culturally evolved at that time. So colonization had opened them up to what was there in Europe, you know, going beyond Britain. And that was where they were seeking for their knowledge. They didn't go to the US until much later, you know, because they considered that they weren't that culturally, you know, exposed. And so they all migrated from here, so you need to go to the source, really, basically. So it's quite an interesting and liberating period for them. You know, I try to imagine how you know anybody could have maybe not risen up to the occasion at that time. I think we have taken a lot. Of course, not everybody was successful. You know, we all know that everybody will not have the same natural ability to meet up in a competitive world. But that was a lovely time to be, and so it was a whole life of experimentation, basically, for him.
It's so interesting what makes a life when you start to look back at it, in that combination of personality, circumstance, family, DNA, cultural influence, decisions that you make along the way, talents that you have, etc. And all of those things coming together in your father's case to position him or to result in him becoming the father of African modernism, which we'll get to unpacking a bit in the next one conversations. And I look forward to really hearing and learning more about what that really means. And it's been delightful chatting to you both and exploring a bit more about the becoming of Uche Okeke, the things that made up this wonderful man that we are now celebrating, and laying the foundation for us for conversations to come later on in this series to really unpack the impact that he had as the father of African modernism and why he was so, and still is so relevant to countries all over the world, from what he was doing and who he was in Nigeria. Thank you both so much for joining us for this conversation today. Salma, always a great privilege and pleasure to have you with us and to hear from you, from the source as such, from so close, more and more about your father. And Lucinda, thank you so much for your wisdom, for your contribution today and in the articles that you've written.
Thank you for allowing me, and thank you, Salma.
Thank you, Lucinda, for your beautiful insight and understanding. We're really privileged that you are able to catch the vision just like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll move across to the hangout and from the stage, and we'll continue the conversation in there. See you that side.
Well, yeah, this kind of thing, yeah.
Hey everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ayla.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. That was so fantastic to listen to. I need to let you guys know something though that I only discovered in the first few minutes of the call. The post didn't go out due to technical difficulties. So, and Michelle didn't get notified until, well, she didn't get notified about it, but I think it was the way she's been scheduling. It just had an error. But I've thought of a solution. So I've recorded it. Of course, I've recorded it, so the recording will be, I just need to do some editing, but I've cleaned up the audio already preemptively, so it should be a lot better.
Thank you.
Then we will put it on YouTube. Then we can have another Discord meeting. I mean, I think the sooner the better, so as soon as possible, but we need to make sure posts go out for it and we generate lots of traction from it. And then we can have another Discord meeting in this Hangout instead, and we can do the thing where we watch a YouTube video with them. How does that sound, Tamzin, and everyone?
That sounds like a good suggestion, Ayla.
Okay, because then we'll still drive traction to the Discord, which we didn't get today because of, well, I should have checked.
Although
we normally
send
do
it to as many people as possible.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. We know we're going to build traffic gradually anyway.
Yeah, but still, I'm so sorry about that. The one time I didn't check thoroughly, we didn't. There's the one time we had an error. So,
oh dear.
I
noticed that who were the people that came in? Are they the technical hands?
No, I don't actually know who those were. One of them was Michelle, but there were other people flitting in and out, and I don't know who they were. So we did get some people coming. So that's good.
Also, there were at a point 2 people were in the audience, and they went out. They,
came back.
Yeah. Did you get any audience?
We did. Yeah. I mean, we did get a few, but sorry, that was totally on our end. But I think doing doing a meet through the channel again and having it going in the YouTube will help resolve that. Then we can promote for that nicely. And I've also already asked Michelle to get a collection of like his artwork and images of him and you guys, just generally all the Asele images. I know you were talking about the Queen. There are images of that. So we can pull those together. I've asked her to do that already. And then in the recording software that I use, I can make a slideshow. Then we can put that on YouTube. And we can meet with people here in the Hangouts and share the video with them, and it'll be like the movie night type thing we were talking about.
That'll be great.
Cool.
The thing is,
fantastic.
We made a call to just start and get going, and even with the Discord channel itself, there is Discord as a platform makes you wait, and you have to have a certain amount of activities running before they allow you to become what they call a discoverable channel. So and I think they do that on purpose. A lot of these things are specifically to prevent, to make sure that it's humans and that there's real human going on and their kind of large community. So we have to earn the right to be discoverable within the channel as well, which is also why we wanted to do these things to the earlier conversation, Salma, this morning, of why we wanted to do things in Discord as opposed to just using YouTube, because the NFT, the collaboration part has to happen in Discord, because that's where the
Capacity is.
yeah, that's where the AI and whatever's been built in. We need to do a certain amount of stuff before then to get this channel to be recognized by Discord, and therefore open it up to being able to advertise through the
Correct. Yeah.
settings. And the thing is that we've got the recordings, and it creates content, and then it's what we do with the content. We'll add content up to the website, and we'll use them in other articles, etc. So it becomes extra content, which is also
And that content, does it drive traffic to the Discord channel by any chance? For instance, the recording that is being banked. If anybody was listening to it, would they come to the channel by any chance?
It depends how we set it up and how we add we'd have to put that Discord channel link in there, and
I think so that we use that as a kind of gimmick, a kind of strategy to also make them discover the channel while we are building the network.
And with the recordings and everything, so I'm gonna put out the last week's one after this, and that'll obviously draw people to Discord when they listen, and then the next one will. So it'll continue drawing people to Discord, because then they'll know that that's happening live on Discord. But yeah, I just would like to do this movie night type thing as soon as possible to correct this, because I'm so sorry about that. We're not Michelle's troubleshooting to see what happened and why it didn't work.
Well, I think that Lucinda is a great writer.
Yeah, you are, Lucinda, you are. Yeah. And it was...
She goes beneath the surface. And when I was having the interview with her, I wouldn't even have imagined what she had picked up.
What you said to me, I loved it. You said to Tamzin, I don't want any of the repeat questions. I thought, and then I thought, no, we'll get through them.
Yeah, because the questions were just there. And actually, when I had the interview with her, those questions didn't even come up like that at all. So if I'd gone and prepared stuff, I would have been completely thrown off. But then again, she has ability to just make it natural.
Thank you.
So
I wanted it to be natural, and I also I'm very interested in my subject, and it was wonderful interviewing you. It was like a synergy. So it helped me. You helped me as well hugely make it what it was. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. And then look how good Tamzin is with this anchoring. Wow. All the Shakespeare theatre productions that you get into, I can see. The funny thing is that I studied dramatic arts in college.
Really?
Yeah. So I can really appreciate what you're doing. Yeah. So see how she weaves in. When you're talking, wonderful teamwork. When you're talking, she picks it from there and goes to the next topic or the next question. So it just flows. It's really natural, and it's good that it's not visual, so we can just relax. I think we're enjoying ourselves hanging out here.
It was so good. You guys do it really well together. You could actually
it's really a good team.
It was very, very smooth, very fluid. It was really good to listen to. I enjoyed it a lot.
If you had butterflies in your stomach before it, as you're talking together with Tamzin anchoring and Lucinda, it just flows. And I think that as we get more and more speakers, it will go like this. Because there are so many stories to be told about Uche Okeke. So many. Each person has their own particular
little chapters.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, and he would have appreciated that. I don't think he wanted anything to be heavy and dark, and he wanted it to be fun, but serious, serious fun.
In the process, you're playing out real serious
issues. Yes, play and fun.
That's just his essence, really.
Yeah.
You can't be building his legacy without getting his essence. You would know that you're going the wrong way.
Yes.
And that's how you get people engaged. He was an engaging person. The closest I know to him would have been my sister Ijoma.
Okay.
Tamzin, you know how she was very good with a lot of people, all kinds of diverse people. That was him. And I didn't even realize until she died, as a matter of fact. And then when the people were coming out from all nooks and crannies, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
That was just my dad was. Yeah. And also having that same attribute of seeing just the good part, basically.
Yeah.
Seeing the possibilities with the relationship. She was exactly that. Yeah.
Wow, wonderful quality.
Yeah, it is a wonderful quality, really. I mean, I'm just seeing all this in hindsight. I wouldn't have realized, but the daily living, you don't even realize so many things. But at the end, when my father died, it was like almost like a kind of mecca.
Yeah.
People were coming up from all kinds of places and he had touched their lives, and artists, they didn't forget what he had done for them. It was
Tamzin says he has a huge legacy, with all these big names,
It's a good thing, and the great thing is that Tamzin and Art Fundi team, they really do get it. Immediately myself and my sister met Tamzin, she knew. And once she told me, I knew that they were the right people.
Yeah, the right connection.
Really seamless. You don't get the right partners to work now. You're dead.
Yeah, well, let's salute your sister. She would have loved this. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
You too, everyone.
Thank
you. Bye.
All the best. Thank you. Bye. Bye.